오늘 또 다른 파트의 부에노스아이레스의 도시 내에서 어제와 다른 곳을 방문한다길래 지금 따라갑니다.
It's called Teatro Colón. Colón means Columbus Theater. The elite said, well, we need a big posh opera house. We're going to be in the league of the big metropolis of this world. We need a big, good opera house. The Teatro Colón was designed by an architect from Italy called Francesco Tamburini. Now, Francesco Tamburini, he made all the plans, but he died pretty soon in 1890. So the works were continued by another architect from Italy called Vittorio Meano. Vittorio Meano was at the prime of his career because he was building this building and he won the contest to build the National Congress that we see on the city center tour, very beautiful building. Now Meano had a problem. He had come from Italy with a woman called Luigia Fraschia. Now Luigia was cheating her husband and escaped to Argentina with the architect Meano. One day he was working here, he got back home to get something and he finds Luigia with another man. She cheated again with the butler of the family, another Italian called Giovanni Pasera. They get into a fight and the architect gets murdered. He was killed. So he couldn't finish the building, obviously. Finally, the building was inaugurated the 25th of May of the year 1908 by the third architect of the Teatro Colón. That was a man from Belgium called Jules Dormal. The building's very classic, but if you see some details, for example, the lamps are like Art Nouveau, which is a bit more modern, more organic, if you know about style or art. The Teatro Colón was the largest opera house on earth when it was inaugurated, with room for 2,500 people sitting down, which is 1,000 seats more than the Opera Garnier of Paris. It's enormous. That shows you that Buenos Aires is very ambitious. Today there's only one opera house larger, the Metropolitan Opera House of New York. But if you've seen that, or you know that building, it's a concrete, modern, like squarish building. It has nothing to do with, I mean, if you don't know it's an opera house, you won't tell it's actually an opera house, because it doesn't look like. So it's the biggest in classical style. Now, it's not very famous for being big or for being beautiful. Most opera houses are beautiful. It's actually famous for something you can't see. The quality of the acoustics. What is the most important thing in an opera house? That it's beautiful, it's big? No. It's that the acoustics are good. Because people don't use microphones in opera. They use the biological, like acoustics. I don't know how to describe it. So this place is actually very, very famous for the acoustical performance. For example, the Acoustical Society of America. Behind me, the oldest synagogue of Buenos Aires. If you didn't know, we have here one of the biggest Jewish communities of the world. It's number 5 in a country in the world, biggest in a city outside of Israel in the United States. There's about 200,000 Jews in this city, which is 20 times more than in Madrid. This is because Argentina had a massive European migration in the late 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. Argentina was a very small country, talking about population, very big territory, very few people. The economy was growing very fast. So we needed more people and the government encouraged the massive migration. We received 7 million immigrants in a country that had only 1 million people in a matter of almost a century. So, you know what, I mean, Buenos Aires was the second city that received most immigrants after New York at that time, the beginning of the 20th century. But here they got to be 50% of the population of this city for half a century, and in many parts of the country about 35-40% of the population. Do you know where most immigrants were coming from?
Spain, Italy.
From Italy, obviously. That's why we speak Spanish and we do like this. Like this. You should come on the tour in La Boca for this. Boca Juniors, River Plate were founded, the football teams were founded by immigrants from Genoa. So they were 25% of the population, the Italians. Then immigrants from Spain, I mean, not colonists or conquerors from Spain. I'm talking about immigrants from Spain when Argentina was already an independent country. And finally, where we're talking now, Jews from Eastern Europe. The Jewish community started with 2 merchants that met under a tree. They were praying in 1862. They say, why don't we try to build the first synagogue of Buenos Aires? They formed the Argentinian Israeli congregation. As these people had great difficulties. They had no money and the community was very, very weak. But in 1880 comes the first big vote of what was known as the Jewish Colonization Association. This was financed by a man from the Austro-Hungarian Empire called Baron von Hirsch. This man had the project of buying farming land in Argentina, yes, and creating Jewish agricultural colonies, like Jewish cities, specially designed and founded by them. Yes, he was going to bring people from the Russian Empire, from Poland, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, much before the World Wars. I'm talking about 1880. So they come here, these people in the first big boats, they get off the boats, They go to the middle of the Argentinian countryside. I'm talking about like people from Poland. They didn't speak our language, didn't even know our culture here, and they decided to start farming. And they found the first city. First city was to be called Kiryat Moshe, the town of Moses. But the guy in the government couldn't write it down. It was too complicated to read. So he says, why don't we write it in French? Sounds it sounds like posh here. Posh here, you say more posh, I don't know. Well, and it was finally named Moisesville, the first Jewish city in Argentina, that ended up having almost 50 Jewish agricultural colonies. That means that in Argentina we had finally Jewish gauchos, if you didn't know. If you look online for this, you're gonna find a book, very famous book in the Argentinian literature, called The Jewish Gauchos. It's a book about stories of people like from Eastern Europe that ended up being a gaucho in the Argentinian countryside. A Jewish gaucho is like a Jewish cowboy. It's difficult to it's a bizarre combination of things, you understand? Well, in the city of Buenos Aires, the Argentinian Israeli congregation starts building this in 1897, and they finally finished with this facade in 1930. You're gonna see different symbols, but I want you to pay special attention to the hands above the door doing like this. Does this make you remember about maybe Star Trek, Live Long and Prosper? Well, if you didn't know, the actor Spock, Leonard Nimoy, you know this, right? Was Jewish, and he takes his own way of blessing of the Kohanim as the inspiration for Live Long and Prosper. Originally with two hands, it represents that a Sheen replaces Wish to Die. It's a longer explanation. Just for now, know that the Star Trek thing comes from that. True story, eh? Not joking. Yeah. Well, this synagogue is different to 99% synagogues of this world. It's very, very special. That's why also we stop here. Normally in synagogues you won't find musical instruments. In Shabbat, normally you don't play music. It's not like the Christian or Catholic Mass, where music is like super, super important. So what instrument you'll find normally in a church? You'll find an organ, with all the tubes, this giant, massive monster instrument. Well, you're not gonna find an organ in a synagogue. It's kind of like weird. Well, there was a place in the world where they were putting organs inside synagogues because they were very prestigious organ buildings, and I don't know if they used them for some social events or not for Shabbat, but that place was Germany. There was a house of organ builders called House Walker, very famous, that manufactured a series of organs of extremely good quality for synagogues. Now, all these were destroyed. You can't go see any of this in Europe today because they were all burned and destroyed by Nazism and then during Second World War. So there's just 3 German manufactured organs by House Walker, the most prestigious builder of Germany, in a synagogue in the world that you can go see today because they're out of Europe. One of them is inside this temple. And you know when it was commissioned? In 1930, just before Nazism. So if you come visit the Jewish Museum during the week, you can get inside the temple and you can see it's a synagogue with an organ, and it's at the front, which is just very weird to see, very unusual to see, and it's more unusual because it was manufactured in Germany by the most prestigious German organ builder in 1930. So for this, the government of Germany paid for the restoration for the G20 meeting in Buenos Aires, so it's absolutely impeccable. It's working. It's quite a relic. It's quite a unique thing. Very, very unusual thing. Well, finally, 2 fun facts about the Jewish community here. Buenos Aires is the only place out of Israel where there's kosher McDonald's. In a shopping mall like 20 blocks away from here, shopping mall of Abasto, which is in the neighborhood of Balvanera. If you go to Balvanera, there's a lot of people with kippah, there's a lot of kosher. I don't know why the Americans don't have a kosher McDonald's, but we have one here. And second, you know Boca Juniors? You like Boca Juniors, a football team? Well, in football stadiums, like massive events, demonstrations, concerts, you won't find people selling hot dogs. People don't buy hot dogs. In the stadium, people eat choripan. You know the choripan, the chorizo sandwich? Well, there's a stand specially for Jewish fans, which is called Kasher. Kasher and Boca put together, and they do kosher choripan. And they have the ramen there with the choripan. I just don't know how they do it, but they do it. It's like the Jewish gaucho, you understand that strange combination of things. Well, do you have any questions about this? We're going to talk about this. Now, this street is emotionally very poor for us. It's moving. Because when we are born, we already know about this. I did not learn in school from my mom. That great thing that makes us proud, they bring your genes like national pride. Do you know that this is one of the most famous streets in the world? Did it tell you? Do you know why? because we're going to cross the widest street in the world. Wow, no one cares. Well, these are the most beautiful places of Buenos Aires. And remember when we started, I told you we had a lot of money in the beginning of the 1900s, that the families of the elites, the landowner elites, they decided to get away from San Telmo and come live here, and start building a new style. And their bigger influence was the French school, you see it inside. So everything looks pretty French. Like that big house. That was House of Familia Chilena. Not only this, check out that building there, it looks very French. Like many of the buildings. And we're gonna get into complete streets that look like very French. Not only the way the buildings look like, also the design of the sidewalk, I mean where things are located, what you call urban design. For example, the corners here are diagonal, what you call a chamfer. It's French invention. In other cities you don't have that type of corner, that type of street or park. So the city of Buenos Aires is very pedestrian friendly, it's a city plan. So you have the boulevards, avenues that are not just for transit, they are to enjoy your walk and see shops, have a coffee in the street. We don't have like big shopping malls and big residential areas, and the street is just to connect. We normally have this together. So it's a very lively city, very beautiful. The neighbors of the north were very well designed in the beginning of the 20th century, and the elites thought that with this new style they could leave behind colonialism of the Spanish Empire, and they could create a fantasy that they had historic importance, because the what we call the aristocracy here, if you like them, the oligarchy, if you don't like them, these landowner elite families were normally coming from historic blood. I mean, families that were here in the independence war, they have fought for a constitution to organize the country. So they were these names you see in history books that for 3-4 generations have been in politics. So you want people to know about that, because that's something money can't pay for. It is more prestigious than just having money. It's not only money that makes you culturally superior, they think. So we need to show that historic importance, but we don't have anything old. We don't have archaeological sites of indigenous, we don't have pyramids. Colonial buildings were super cheap if you compare them with, I don't know, the ones in Mexico or in any other place. So what architecture we have to show we're great? And the French were doing these manuals, how to make an awesome looking building, like putting together the best of the Greek, Romans, and whatever there is, and buildings that look like this. Yes, this was the private residence of Familia Chilena. I mean, built in 1908, beginning of the 20th century, in South America. It's absolutely crazy.
Very nice.
Buenos Aires is the only city in the whole continent that actually looks like this. That's why sometimes you buy a guidebook of Buenos Aires, and it says at some points the hero is like our George Washington, our Simón Bolívar, that guy there in school for freedom, creating the best war general. He's called José de San Martín. San Martín is his surname. And it's not that he's a saint, he's part of the state. And if you know what happened to this man, you'll understand all the independence process in South America. Not just the Argentina one, but all the countries in this continent that were part of the Spanish Empire. So pay attention for the next 10 minutes. This is going to be a good history lesson. Well, Spain. He betrayed the Spanish. He decided to put his brother Joseph on the Spanish throne. So the Spanish find that their country is absolutely occupied by French troops. So they organize this guerrilla resistance and they start fighting the French. The French take the King of Spain prisoner to France. So the Spanish tried to form an emergency government in the south of Spain called the Council of Seville. The Council of Seville said that because the king was in a prison, they were going to rule in his name. I mean, we represent the king. Now the situation was very unstable, so the Council of Seville was finally dissolved in 1809 because the French troops were fighting and were pushing into the territories of, in the Iberian Peninsula. So guess what? We were part of Spain. We were part of the Spanish Empire. But suddenly there was no Spain. I mean, there was no king, and Spain was part of France or conquered by France. So what we were going to do about it? Well, we had a big assembly. The Plaza de Mayo is the main square of the city. We see it on the city center tour. In that plaza, there's only one colonial building we did not demolish, the only one standing. It's called the Cabildo, the old city hall. In that place, the 25th of May of the year 1810, we had a big assembly, big meeting, and we said, if the Council of Seville said that they could replace king's authority, why can't we create a council and rule these lands in the name of the king? So mind this, we created a new government that sworn loyalty to the King of Spain. We said we are part of the kingdom, we like the King of Spain, but unfortunately he's in a prison in France. So guess what? The we can't do much about it, and we're going to decide what's best for us in his name. You understand what's going on? I mean, in politics, I mean, unless you're getting something out of it, you're going to get in trouble. So why declare independence? The king's not there. I mean, we want to convince the people this is a legal government. So if we declare independence, it's going to be too much conflict. It's process. It's too much. We just say we're loyal to the king, but he's in a prison. He can't do anything. Factually, we can do whatever that we want. Factually, we're free. So we didn't declare independence. We're so loyal to the king. Though the 25th of May of 1810, most consider here, the birthday of Argentina, the beginning of freedom that makes the Argentinian country. 25th of May is the most important national day in Argentina. It's the most celebrated day. That's why the main plaza in this city is called the Plaza of the month of May, the Plaza de Mayo. Now, Argentina did declare formally its independence the 9th of July of 1816, 6 years later. But the Independence Day here is considered to be a certification. That's why it is celebrated, but it's not the most important day. That same situation is is replicated in Chile and Venezuela, because this gap of time when the king was prisoner. So we didn't have any king to fight against because he was not there. So why declare independence? We just try to build some new government that will have more strength to build a nation in the future. You understand? Well, so in the beginning, the independence war in South America was actually a civil war between people that liked the new order, these new governments that wanted to change how things were organized, people that were very angry with the dynasty of the Bourbons, the changing of the dynasty of Spain, that had make big difference between the New World and Spain, and people that like the old order, that say, no man, the king is prisoner, but we shall see our authorities organized like he left them here, so when he comes back, things are in order, you understand? Who were in favor of the old order? The people living in Peru. Peru was the most powerful place in South America. If you go to Peru, you're going to see these awesome looking Spanish Baroque cathedrals. I mean, they had the greatest population, all the money, all the guns. So they were decided to bring order again to the empire and destroy all these new assemblies created by people. And there was a war against the forces of Peru. Buenos Aires was never reconquered, but Chile, for example, yes. Colombia, Venezuela, yes. So suddenly all starts becoming again the rule of colonial authorities. The situation gets more difficult. Napoleon was defeated in Russia. The king comes back on the throne. Yes. Argentina was sustaining its freedom, and finally we said, well, you know, we were lying. We didn't like the king, actually. We have already created a flag, composed a song. We're going to create a country, so sorry. We declared independence the 9th of July of 1816. But Independence Day, again, it's not like in the United States, like, wow, Independence Day, you understand? Like, it's, wow, the most important day. So in 1817, now we're formally speaking about an independence war. We say, no way, we don't like the king. We're different people. We're not Spanish anymore. I mean, this is not part of Spain anymore. We are different. And in this time, everyone knows that we need to conquer the city of Lima because Lima was bringing reinforcements, forces, troops. I mean, we need to strike the stronghold of Spanish power and economic power in South America. So there were two big generals in South America, you must know, that did the two campaigns, the South and the North campaign. South campaign was organized by this man behind me, called José de San Martín. San Martín crossed the Andes Mountains from the province of Mendoza into Chile, to liberate Chile, and went by sea to conquer the city of Lima, from Argentina to Lima, into Peru. He declared the independence of Peru. If you didn't know, this man is also the national hero of Peru. If you go to Peru, you're going to go to Lima, you're going to go to Plaza San Martín, you're going to see this man on the horse, and they're going to tell you all this story again. Yes. So, technology from Chicago, and built a very good residential skyscraper. This type of building only existed in Chicago, New York at that time. I mean, the world had never seen this. It was very modern technology. In South America, this is considered to be absolutely impossible. So, she built the tallest building in Latin America. She called it the Cabinet Building. And it was the tallest building for almost a decade here. And the society hated it because it was ugly. Like the elites, because they like the European styles. Yeah? So it's like, it's an American Art Deco. It could be a building in Chicago in the 1930s, basically. Just to see how much the city changed, how the way it looks, the way it feels. The architecture will make you feel different every corner. Now we're going to change styles again, because we're going to go see something that I call the Big Ben of South America. Yeah, the clock tower. Okay guys, there's room here in the shade for everyone. If you want to be in the shade, I recommend. Check my there's more this shit here, if you want to stand here just in case. Well, you know, in 1910 we were celebrating our centennial, 100 years since the revolution in 1810 I just described. So we were celebrating 100 years of our country. The elite was prepared with all the money we had back then to run an awesome birthday party, parades, shows, brand new buildings. So when you run an awesome birthday party, what do you expect to get? Awesome birthday gifts, obviously. So many countries, they built monuments in the city that we call the monuments of the centennial as gifts for the Argentinian country at that time, quite a prestigious nation. And for example, in the parks in Palermo, there are many of these. The monuments of the Spanish community, this Art Nouveau giant marble like column with all these figures. That's where they put a giant screen to see the World Cup. Now, you know, you want to go see the World Cup in a place full of people shouting? Like, I mean, feel the crowd. I mean, if you like the crowd and passion, you can go tomorrow to Palermo. Well, then I can put it on the map if you want when we finish. They put a giant screen. The government put a giant screen. Well, they stream all the matches, and not just Argentina. Well, and there's the Germany Plaza built by the Germans with all the statues and fountains, very beautiful. So many countries did the same. But there was one country that was like a biggest pal. You can say like not really like the biggest trading partner, biggest clients. They built for us that tower, biggest birthday gift for the centennial. So now you say who built the clock? Who built the clock for us? The British Empire. That's why I called it the Big Ben of South America. They say you like the Big Ben. Okay, we just make one for you. Now it's not a neo-Gothic style like the Tower of Big Ben in London. The Big Ben in London is from the 19th century. So this is from the beginning of the 20th century. It's about like half century, 60 years newer. And it's a style called Neo-Palladian, which is like Neo-Renaissance, very Anglo-looking. Now, in front of the tower, because there's a lot of things to talk about here, there's a building behind the trees with a spike on the top. That's a beautiful train station, the train station of Retiro. What you're going to see is that in Buenos Aires we have these beautiful grand train stations like in European cities, and actually you can take a train to go to the suburbs. There's 800 kilometers of suburban trains. This is because trains were used originally for all this cargo of the tremendous amount of products coming from the countryside. Argentina has one of the best farming lands in the planet. The city of Buenos Aires is surrounded by thousands of square kilometers of grass. No trees, just grass, meadow, perfect weather, far away from war. If you have institutional stability, some investment, you can produce much cheaper and much better than in most territories of the planet. So Argentina has always been a superpower farming, but the problem is we didn't have the capital to invest. What do I mean? When you're a guy with great ideas, but you need $1 million, so you ask, great. Well, we have here the war memorial for the last war of our history. The Malvinas War takes place in 1982 between Argentina and the United Kingdom. You might know it as the Falklands War. Falklands and Malvinas are two different names for the same place. These islands you see represented here. If you haven't seen them, you just can open Google Maps and go to the south of South America. 400 kilometers in front of the Patagonia coastline. There's two big islands, quite easy to see on the map. Big. I'm not talking about this like really small little thing. Big islands. We call Malvinas, we say they belong to us. The United Kingdom calls them the Falklands. They say they belong to them as overseas territories of the UK. The islands have no indigenous people, so obviously Europeans come here and they take them. And the first who put a foot on the islands were the French. They called the islands the Malvines. That's where the name Malvinas was coming from. They put a settlement in the 1700s on the right island. The British come 1 year after. They put a settlement on the other island. Yes, and they called them the Falklands because they said a sailor has seen the islands before from the boat and called them the Falklands. The King of Spain says, you know, guys, get out of here. Like, I don't want you to be like colonizing South America, so get out of these islands. The French make a pact and they're out of the story. They live forever. The British were expelled by force by the Spanish forces, yes, and they left the flag on the floor, very angry when they were expelled, saying this belongs to the King of England. Literally, that's what happened. Then the islands were under Spanish administration. Argentina becomes an independent country from Spain. Argentina says, well, all the territories of Spain here now are called Argentina, and they're a new country. So that included the islands. There were a group of Argentinians living on the islands, Argentinian population in the islands, until the year 1833, when the British came back, decided with boats and guns to take back these territories. I was saying that before Argentina ever existed as a nation, they had these islands, they belonged to them, they were gonna assert freedom of navigation around the islands and the South Atlantic, so they were gonna take them. Yes. The islands are in strategic, were strategic because before the Panama Canal was built, boats used to say like this around South America. If you didn't know, the Pacific and the Atlantic, they never meet actually naturally. That's why they built the Panama Canal. So it was in a strategic position like Gibraltar, the Suez Canal, Singapore. Not a place like a colony or a place for resources, but actually a network of traffic police, you understand? The situation changed in 1982. Before the war, the islanders used to come to Argentina for most what they needed. The islands were super run down. But now I'm getting to what happened later. In 1833, no one cared very much here, really. I mean, I know nationalism in Argentina will teach you that it was a great offense of the British taking the islands, but the truth is that the British have been our biggest trading partner for more than 100 years, and it took 149 years for us to have a war for these islands. They built up the tower in between 1833 and 1982 when we finally had a war. In 1833, Patagonia was ruled by indigenous tribes, and there was a concrete campaign of the United States in the 1870s. We had a war against the Brazilian Empire. We had a war against Paraguay in 1871, that ended in 1871. So until 1880, there were governors that were saying, my state's not going to respect the Constitution, they're not going to respect the Argentine national government. I want to build my own country. So it's more complicated than what you think. Argentina, as you see it on the map today, was created finally in 1880. But the important thing is that no Argentinian government never accepted legally British sovereignty of the islands. No one never said, okay, we're okay, we lost to the British, we signed a contract, like we admit it, we say it out loud, we're recognized internationally. I mean, it was a legal claim, that was it. And when you leave something unsolved, it could be a political tool in the future for a country to claim or to start a war or something. Now, when things are not finally solved politically, it can lead to a war, in this case in 1982. What changed so much that they had a war in 1982 and not before? Well, in 1982, Argentina was being ruled by a military dictatorship. The military had come to power in 1976, claiming that they were coming to kill the Marxist guerrilla groups operating in the country, threatening apparently the Argentinian state. That's the last wife of President Perón, Isabel Perón, had become president of Argentina after her husband dies, and the situation was very unstable in the country. She signed what you call the Decrees of Annihilation. She basically called the army to do whatever it takes to kill all enemies of the state. Normally the military, I know people trained to go to war, they're not people trained to run the government, to solve internal conflicts or disputes or debates between the people of the country. Man, a politician is, you can be a military and a politician, but you need to do a political career. You're not gonna be in the barracks, and the next day you're gonna be the president of the country, understand? Or you're gonna run the education of the country or the healthcare of the country. Well, the military run a coup d'etat the 24th of March of 1976, and they say they are gonna reorganize the country, what they call the National Reorganization, basically exterminating all the threats to the survival of the Argentinian states. That included blacklists, secret detention centers, and a huge massacre of violation of human rights, as with the excuse of exterminating the Marxist guerrillas or Che Guevara inspired guerrillas operating in the country. Yes? By the 1980s, the situation was a disaster. I mean, not only all these secret detention centers, the judicial process were all abolished, the economy was a disaster. The government needed a victory, some great cause, some unity, something that would push forward the agenda and make them have this big draw. You know, these guys were terrible, but all the sacrifice was worth it because no other government never could achieve that great objective. For example, having the Malvinas Islands. The islands have become a very propagandistic thing. You know, many ideological groups in Argentina think, or thought, I'm not saying what I think personally, in my opinion, I'm describing but many people have, oh, you know, if you're a fake in Argentina, or there's obviously different opinions. But Argentina is being a very rich country, so I'm asking all the time. Many think that becoming rich is not a matter of how much money you have. It's how much you control, yes, or how much power you really have. Many people think that Argentina lived a fantasy of being rich, but it was just a piece of a game in a much more powerful nation's game, which was the British Empire. as I said, Buenos Aires had the long machinery. So the investment was carried on by British capital. It's French, it's actually part of France because it's a French embassy today. As I
French
told you,
embassy.
many of these buildings are embassies. And the French bought this house in 1939 to family Ortiz Basualdo. In some cases, it's quite an interesting story about it. We're gonna see that with the next block with the embassy of Brazil. Let's go see it. Former house of family Pereda. Yes, Celedonio Pereda owns 220,000 hectares of land. He was a multimillionaire, and he invited the visiting presidents of Brazil to stay in his house during his visits in the 1930s. That president was called Getúlio Vargas. If you ever study history of Brazil and you know about one guy in the 20th century, you're gonna know about this big guy called Getúlio Vargas. A very powerful president with the unions, with workers, national industry, very personalistic. Back then, we didn't have these big hotels, so receiving a commission of 30-40 people traveling with a president was difficult, and it was very normal that guys living in these houses would offer them to stay at home. So Getúlio Vargas stays here. Then he goes back to Brazil. In 1944, the owner of this house dies. They tell the news to Getúlio Vargas. He was president in Brazil in 1944. And he said, well, also, I'm so sad. My friend Celedonio just died. What a beautiful time I had in his house. What a beautiful house. What a beautiful house. He says, guys, I want the government of Brazil, my country, to buy that property to be the embassy in Buenos Aires. Yes. Brazil was a bit behind schedule. Most countries have acquired these houses in the 30s and 40s. For example, the French in 1939, the Americans had the big house in Palermo in 1929. So because of a personal whim of the president of Brazil, he wanted the house with the furniture inside. He said, tell the family to take their clothes, but I want the house with everything, with furniture, all like I knew it. The family says, okay, we want to sell the property. We want a boat, a ship loaded with 4,000 tons of iron in the port of Rio de Janeiro. So that was the deal. They sold the property for 4,000 tons of iron. You might ask why? Well, it was financial speculation. Now sometimes money is not your best investment. Money has inflation. In the Argentinian case, it's very severe. For example, investing in Argentinian pesos is a very bad idea. Having pesos for long is a very bad idea. We have 70% inflation. Maybe you leave a cheese in the fridge and will increase its value more than the Argentinian peso. Embassy. The Vatican is an independent state, just like a country.
Vatican.
So they have
Vatican
diplomacy, and they don't call the ambassador. It's called nuncio, but it's like an ambassador. And he lives here. Now the story of the house is quite interesting. It used to be the house of a lady called Adelia Arilaos. Adelia Arilaos married with Ambrosio Olmos, governor of the province of Córdoba. Together, they had one of the biggest fortunes of the country. But Ambrosio died only 4 years after they got married. They had no children, so she was alone with no family and a great fortune. I'm not talking just some money. I'm talking about millions. Like she owned 300,000 hectares of land. I mean, like it's more than you can spend in a lifetime. So imagine you're alone, your husband died, and you have no children. You have all this money. Well, you just need to plan what you want to do with your life. There's a purpose for all this fortune. You're gonna share it with others or spend it just for yourself. I don't know. She had some plans. It seems like her brothers, sisters didn't like it very much. Her parents did not agree what she wanted to do with the administration of the properties. So after her husband died, she goes for vacations to European summer with her parents. And when she gets there, they say that she's experiencing some psychosis, like some type of schizophrenia or something. She needs to be sent to an asylum. Like, you know, everyone thinks that the family wants to get the money. And they want to take control of the properties because they thought she was going to spend it very bad. Well, this part of her life is very secretive. We don't have much information exactly what happened because she was not a public figure. What we know is that at some point she tried to look for a lawyer, and she spent a year in an asylum in France. And after 1 year, the doctor said that she was miraculously cured. I mean, if you know how psychosis works, it's not exactly like that. So everyone believes that actually the family wants the money because then she comes here and continues her life and she had no issues. And you know what she wanted to do with the money? She wanted to donate all the money that she had. She wanted to be a philanthropist. She wanted to do charity. In Argentina back then, like in many countries of the world, the state or the government did not do all the things that it does today. many religious organizations or community groups were in charge of charity. Charity was considered to be a community religious thing, not a government or state plan. Nowhere, because they do it for free. But normally they were helped by these very big donations of ladies of the elites. Be good or pretend to be good, or because of social pressure, I don't know, you can have your own opinions. They had a society called the Beneficiary Society, in which they did these great donations to build a school here, an orphanage here, whatever. Normally, who was going to work that building? Well, the Franciscans, the Jesuits, whatever order there is, because the Catholic Church had that social assistance in very remote places that the state could not. So that's how many social services actually got to many faraway places of this country. That's how it works. And yeah, I mean, I'm just explaining. Then you can decide. Mariana.
와, 어떤 거인이
Okay, guys, come here, please.
이걸 들고 있는 것 같이 나무를. 오늘 날씨도 좋고요.
Okay, guys.
와,
Just wait for everybody.
이게 도대체 부에노스아이레스에 얼마나 볼만한 데가 많은지 모릅니다. 너무나도 아름다워요. 아, 너무 아름답습니다.
This is actually built in the 1700s, in 1732, and it's a colonial building. I started this story saying it's very difficult to find colonial buildings. Most of them were demolished, were replaced in the 19th century. Many beautiful churches were embellished. They put things in the facade, they don't look colonial anymore. This was a Franciscan convent built in the countryside, yes, in the 1700s, out of the city, owned by a branch of the Franciscan order called Franciscan Recoletos. These were friars. Recoleto comes from the Latin word collectio, means to pick up, it's a spiritual name. Therefore, the name of this area, Recoleta, or La Recoleta, Recoleta Name. They lived alone here for 90 years until the year 1822, when the city government decides to change the relationship between the Catholic Church and the state and forbids religious organized orders to operate inside the city. Once you have a monastery, a convent has to be out of the city. Okay, so this was after this a parish to the priest, no Franciscans living here, and they had an orchard and garden on the left. It's behind a tree there. There's a brick wall. There used to be an orchard and garden. That was excavated by the state. That is one of the most awesome looking places in the city. Go visit. It's out of this world. It's absolutely amazing. I used to do the last stop of this tour, not under the tree, but actually there. The problem is that they started charging a fee for foreigners that want to visit the cemetery. It used to be like public and free, but now no. So I canceled my last stop there. Though we do run a tour of the cemetery. It's not a free tour, it's a paid tour, but it's very accessible. If you didn't see it on our webpage, now I can help you when we finish. Our tour guide is going to be there at 3:30 for that tour. The Recoleta Cemetery was the only one in Buenos Aires until the plague of yellow fever in 1871. That means all people were buried there. That included all people who died between 1822 and 1871. Guess who died in that time? All our founding fathers, all the people that fought for freedom, all the people that created the Constitution. It is a crucial moment of building our country. So that was very, very historically important. Yeah. When the fever got here, it was so overwhelming that they opened the cemetery further away, 100 times larger. Tourism go visit. That's called Cemetery of Chacarita, which is the most active cemetery today. This is here, it's very old, it's only 4 hectares. It's kind of obsolete for funerary needs. But the elites, the landowner elites, yes, when they come build a neighborhood here in the countryside where the old convent and old cemetery used to be, yes, they say money is not what makes us better, it's not what makes us great. It's that my family has been fighting. Who's playing now? Ecuador? Oh, that guy likes Ecuador.
He comes from Ecuador.
Yeah, there might be some Ecuadorians.
Si, si.
I don't think there's going to be people from Senegal, but maybe. I was saying, so if you say I have something money can't pay for, which is my grandpa fought for freedom, you want to have that awesome looking grave, you understand? So they reorganized the cemetery in 1881, they built a wall around it, and the heart of the aristocratic neighborhood was the cemetery of Recoleta. That means it was not the mansions, it was not all this luxury, it was actually the history of commitments with the nation that made them be so aristocratic. like aerial roots, the trees roots to the ground. So it takes like more territories, like a monster. You see it, you can celebrate the office trade. Like all these clusters.
Oh, sorry.
Roots of the
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.